The morning light slanted through the towering teal pines, washing the clearing in a pale blue haze that smelled faintly of sap and cold iron. Jack Harmon stood at the center of it, shirtless and sweating despite the chill, his axe rising and falling in steady rhythm. Each strike cracked through the silence like a heartbeat, sharp and unrelenting. 3 years on Ardan had given him this routine, solitude, and the illusion of peace. He'd traded the chaos of the colonial cores for this forest, far from orders, far from blood. The great trees didn't ask questions, didn't die screaming, didn't stare at him with eyes full of trust before the blast wave took them. They just stood. And for a man who'd seen too much, that was enough. The pile of split logs had grown tall beside the cabin, and he was already thinking about breakfast coffee brewed from frowen seeds, and maybe the last of the dried venison, when a faint sound cracked across the quiet. A twig, not wind, not animal. His muscles tightened before thought caught up. The axe froze mid-swing, and his head turned toward the tree line, eyes narrowing. The forest held its breath. Jack lowered the axe slowly, his hand drifting toward the pulse pistol holstered under the log bench. "Who's there?" His voice carried low and even, the old authority still in it. Nothing answered, just mist curling between the trunks. Then another sound, a rustle, hesitant. A movement like someone trying to make themselves smaller. "I said come out." The words echoed, swallowed by the forest. For a moment, he thought maybe he'd imagined it. Then the ferns parted, and 2 small figures stepped into the clearing. Jack blinked, lowering the weapon a fraction. Children. No, not human children. Their skin shimmered faintly in the blue light, the same hue as the trees that towered above them. Hair pale silver, tangled and matted with leaves. They wore what looked like rough-woven tunics, torn at the hems, and both were trembling. One had a thin scratch along her cheek, glistening dark against her skin. They stared up at him with wide, luminous eyes that seemed too big for their faces' eyes, that caught every fleck of light, reflecting the world back like a mirror. "Please," one whispered, the sound barely a breath. "Please help us." Jack's stomach tightened. He'd seen that look before, on refugees during the border evacuation's pure animal fear. He set the axe down, keeping one hand near the pistol. "You're a long way from any village," he said, voice gruff. "You get lost?" The taller one, the one with the scratch, shook her head hard. "They found us. We ran." Her voice cracked. The other twin clutched her arm, whispering something in a language his translator implant stuttered through before spitting out a single word. "Collectors." Jack exhaled through his nose, slow. Damn it. He'd heard the rumors off-world biotech syndicates paying mercenaries to hunt Ardanites for their genetic material. Blood that could heal. Blood that could kill. None of it had ever been proven, but now he was staring at the evidence in 2 terrified, dirt-smudged faces. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been running?" 3 days, the younger one said. "They took everyone. Mama, the others. We hid in the hollow trees." Her voice quivered. "But they'll come. They always come." Jack dragged a hand down his beard, glancing toward the tree line again. He didn't want this. Didn't need this. He'd come here to leave other people's wars behind. But the memory of a little girl on Titan 7 flickered in his mind, a child he'd been too slow to save, and that was enough to push the decision over the edge. "Names," he said roughly. "What do I call you?" The scratched one straightened a little, her chin trembling but proud. "I'm Nera. This is my sister, Kira." He nodded once, the motion deliberate, final. "All right, Nera. Kira, there's food inside. Water, too. You can rest there a while." They hesitated, glancing toward the sky as if expecting the clouds to split open. "Go?" he said more softly, tilting his head toward the cabin. "You're safe for now." They moved together, small hands clasped tight, stepping across the clearing like creatures afraid of their own shadows. Jack followed, scanning the horizon, every sense alive again in a way he hadn't felt since the war. He told himself it was temporary. One meal, one kindness, and then he'd point them south to the ranger station. That was it. But as he opened the cabin door and let them pass, a distant hum trembled through the air, the unmistakable whine of an engine cutting low over the trees. His heart sank. Hover transport, military grade. He saw the twins freeze in the doorway, their luminous eyes wide with new terror. "They found us," Kira whispered. Jack's jaw clenched. In the reflection of the cabin window, he saw the man he'd tried to stop being the soldier, the killer, the one who always stepped between danger and the innocent. He picked up his pulse rifle from the wall, checked the charge, and muttered under his breath, "So much for staying out of trouble." The forest seemed to hold its breath again as the hum grew louder. This time, he didn't hesitate. The sound grew into a thunderous vibration that rattled the cabin walls and sent ripples through the water in Jack's old tin mug. He moved quickly, methodically, pulling the window shutters closed and dimming the lights. "Stay away from the windows," he told the twins without raising his voice. The military calm was back, the same cold focus that had gotten him through years of fire and noise. He crossed to the bed, reached beneath it, and dragged out a metal case covered in dust and oil stains. The latch clicked open under his thumbprint, revealing neatly arranged gear, ration packs, med injectors, small detonator discs. The smell of old metal and lubricant filled the air. "What is that?" Nara asked, her small voice trembling. "Old habits," Jack said, slinging a strap of ammunition over his shoulder. "And bad ones at that." He moved to the far wall, gripped the edge of the thick woven rug, and pulled it back to reveal a square steel hatch embedded in the floorboards. "When I built this place, I added an escape tunnel, just in case the forest decided to turn mean." He tried to sound dry, almost amused, but his pulse was pounding hard enough to feel in his teeth. Kira pressed close to her sister, whispering something too soft for him to catch. "They're close," Nara said suddenly, her gaze darting toward the ceiling. "I can feel them." Jack froze mid-motion, then slowly turned toward her. "Feel them?" Kira nodded, her pale hair catching the dim cabin light. "They have trackers that taste our blood from the air. But when they're near, we sense their hunger. It burns." That word hunger made the back of Jack's neck prickle. He'd seen predators before, human and otherwise, but this was different. "Down the hatch," he ordered. "Now." The twins obeyed without hesitation, dropping into the darkness below. Jack followed, hauling the hatch closed above them. The narrow tunnel pressed in on all sides, smelling of earth and iron. He switched on a dim wrist light, the beam cutting through the dark. The twins crawled ahead, their small bodies moving easily where his shoulders scraped and his knees dug into the soil. "How far does it go?" Nara asked. "Half a click. There's a cave system under the ridge that scrambles scanners. We'll hole up there." A dull thud sounded above them, followed by another heavier this time. The vibration shivered through the tunnel walls. Jack knew that sound too well. Boots. They'd landed. He muttered a curse under his breath. "Keep moving." The girls scrambled faster, the dirt smearing across their dresses. Jack reached back to his belt and tapped a small transmitter. 3 proximity mines were armed in sequence around the cabin perimeter. It wasn't much, but it would buy them minutes. Maybe less. The tunnel sloped downward, and the faint luminescence of Ardan's mineral veins began to shimmer along the walls. Strange blue crystals grew from the soil, glowing softly as if alive. Kira reached out and brushed her fingers against one. The light flared brighter, following her touch. Jack watched, half in awe, half in fear. "It responds to you," he murmured. Nera nodded. "The planet knows its children." "Then tell it to keep us hidden," he muttered. Behind them, a muffled explosion shook dust from the ceiling. The air filled with fine grit, and Jack ducked low to protect the twins as the shockwave rippled through the ground. One of the mines had gone off. He could picture it perfectly, the cabin ripped apart, smoke blooming between the trees, collectors scattering like startled insects. It bought them time, but it also told the enemy exactly where to look. After another tense minute of crawling, the tunnel opened into a wider chamber, the air cooler and carrying a faint mineral tone. The girls stumbled to their feet, coughing softly. Jack knelt beside them, scanning the narrow fissure overhead that let in a faint sliver of light. "We rest here," he said. "Drink some water, keep quiet." He handed them a canteen. The twins drank in silence, their trembling slowing. Nera finally looked up at him. "Why are you helping us?" Jack hesitated. There were too many answers, and none that felt right. "Because someone should," he said at last. "And I don't like bullies." The simple truth of it hung in the air. Kira set the canteen down carefully. "Most humans don't care what happens to us." Jack gave a humorless grunt. "Most humans don't care about much that doesn't come with a paycheck." A distant rumble echoed faintly through the tunnel system. Another detonation, farther away this time. Jack leaned back against the wall, pulse rifle across his knees, listening. His old instincts mapped the situation automatically. 2 crafts, ground patrols fanning out, scanners sweeping low. They'd comb every inch of the ridge before sundown. But these caves, he remembered, had mineral pockets dense enough to block even military-grade sensors. They had a chance. Nera had curled up against her sister, eyes heavy with exhaustion, but Kira stayed awake, watching Jack quietly. "Your eyes are strange," she said softly. Cold, but kind. Jack almost smiled. "You've got me pegged, then?" "No," Kira murmured, her small voice barely audible. "Just seen eyes like that before. My mother's. She used to stare at the horizon like she was waiting for something that never came." The words hit him harder than he expected. He looked away, toward the shimmer of the cave wall. Outside, another low roar drifted through the earth. Maybe the transport circling, maybe something worse. He exhaled and forced the thought down. "Get some sleep," he said. "We move before dawn." As their breathing slowed to soft rhythm, Jack sat awake in the dark, his rifle steady across his lap, the faint crystal glow painting his scarred face in blue light. He'd meant to spend the rest of his life cutting trees and forgetting names. But here he was again, guarding strangers, waiting for danger to find him. The planet around him hummed softly, like a heartbeat in the soil. And Jack had the unsettling feeling that Ardan itself was watching, and that his quiet exile had just ended forever. By dawn, the forest was a gray-green mist, the kind that muffled sound and made every shape half real. Jack emerged from the tunnel first, scanning the ridge with his pulse rifle. The air smelled of ozone, and scorched resin-proof the collectors had hit his cabin hard. Smoke trailed above the trees in a thin, bitter column, twisting into the pale sky. He didn't linger on it. The cabin had been a refuge, not a home. The twins crawled out behind him, blinking at the light. Their skin shimmered faintly in the dawn haze, reflecting the cool tones of the forest like water catching sunlight. "Stay low," he whispered. They followed him into the undergrowth, small shadows in his wake. The forest here was denser than any earthwood trunks, coiled with living vines, leaves that glowed faintly from within. Every step seemed to whisper beneath their feet. Jack moved like a man who'd spent years surviving places that wanted him dead. He paused often, listening for engines or voices, but the only sounds were the drone of insects and the faint trickle of a nearby stream. For a moment, he let himself believe they'd slipped away clean. Then a branch creaked above him. Reflex took over. He pivoted, rifle raised, and found himself staring down the barrel of a weapon he didn't recognize. The figure holding it was tall and slender, skin a deeper blue than the twins, marked with pale bioluminescent patterns that curved along her jaw and down her throat. Her silver hair was braided tight against her head, and her eyes violet and sharp as cut glass fixed on him with deadly precision. "Don't move, human," she said. Her voice was low and melodic, but there was iron in it. Jack froze, though the twins ran forward before he could stop them. "Lena!" they cried, relief breaking through their fear. The woman's expression flickered, the weapon lowering slightly. "Nera? Kira?" She dropped to one knee, pulling them close, her tone softening to something almost maternal. "You're alive." The twins clung to her, whispering all at once. Jack stayed where he was, lowering his rifle by slow degrees. "Guess I owe you a thank you," he said dryly, "for not shooting first." She looked up sharply, her gaze assessing him again. "They said a human helped them. I thought it was a lie. Most humans don't help my kind." "Yeah," Jack muttered. "You wouldn't be wrong about that." He glanced toward the tree line. "We should move. That smoke means they'll be sweeping the area soon." Lena studied him for another beat, then nodded once. "Follow me." The path she took was invisible to Jack's eyes, a narrow trail hidden beneath curtain-like vines, the ground soft with luminous moss. As they walked, he noticed the way she moved, fluid but deliberate, her hand occasionally brushing a leaf or branch. The plants responded, curling aside as if guided by an unseen wind. It was subtle, beautiful, and a little unnerving. "The forest listens to you," he said quietly. "To all Ardanites," she corrected without looking back. "It knows our breath, our heartbeat. It hides us when it chooses. And when it doesn't?" She glanced over her shoulder, the faintest smile tugging her lips. "Then we run faster." They reached a ravine where a thin waterfall spilled into a glowing pool. Lena knelt beside a flat slab of stone and pressed her palm against its surface. The markings on her skin lit up in response, spreading outward until the rock shimmered and dissolved into a hidden entrance. "Welcome to what's left of the Ardanite resistance," she said, leading them through. Inside, the cavern opened into a world that took Jack's breath for a moment. The walls pulsed with soft light from embedded crystals, illuminating a network of tunnels that stretched deep underground. Makeshift structures had been built from scavenged metal and woven roots. Dozens of Ardanites moved about, some tending to gardens that glowed faintly green, others carrying supplies. When the trio entered, the crowd stilled. Every eye turned toward Jack, the only human among them. He felt their fear and anger like heat. "He saved them," Lena said before anyone could speak. Her voice carried through the chamber. "He fought the collectors. Without him, the twins would be dead." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. An older Ardanite stepped forward, skin marked with age lines that glowed softly in the dim light. His white eyes studied Jack with weary curiosity. "I am Elder Torin," he said. "Humans have brought much sorrow to our world. Why are you here, soldier?" Jack met his gaze evenly. Not a soldier anymore. Just a man with an axe who got tired of running. Torin's expression didn't change, but something in his stance eased. "Then perhaps you will rest here for a time. The forest may have chosen you for a reason." Jack almost laughed. "The forest doesn't choose. I just got lucky." Lena's voice was quiet behind him. "It does choose, human. You'll see." Hours later, When the twins were asleep in a nest of soft moss and the camp had gone quiet, Jack sat alone by one of the crystal pools. He watched the blue light shimmer over his scarred hands, wondering when exactly he'd stopped believing in causes and started caring again. Lena approached, her footsteps soundless. She sat beside him, her reflection rippling across the glowing surface. "You're different," she said. "Most humans I've met bring harm without meaning to. But you—" She trailed off, her violet eyes catching the faint light. "You act before you think, but your heart listens first?" Jack stared into the water, unable to meet her gaze. "Don't read too much into it. I've just seen too many graves." "So have we," she said softly. Her hand brushed his light, deliberate. The crystals flared, their glow intensifying around them, and for a heartbeat, Jack felt something electric, alive, humming beneath his skin like the planet itself had taken a breath through him. He pulled his hand back quickly, shaken. Lena only smiled faintly, her markings still glimmering with the echo of the light. "The forest knows you now," she murmured. "That can't be good," he muttered. But as the hum faded into silence, he knew one thing with certainty: the world had shifted beneath his feet. And the line he'd drawn between his past and this new life had already vanished. The days that followed blurred into motion and purpose, the kind Jack hadn't felt since before his discharge. The resistance camp hummed with quiet urgency training drills, whispered strategy meetings, supply runs through the tunnels. The Ardanites moved with natural coordination, communicating through gestures, glances, and a subtle resonance Jack could almost feel like static in the air. He worked beside them repairing old pulse rifles, reinforcing defensive barriers, cutting timber for shelters. For once, the work wasn't about survival, it was about protection. Still, the unease lingered. The collectors hadn't attacked again, not yet, and Jack knew that kind of silence meant planning. One morning, he found Lena at the edge of the forest, standing barefoot in the dew-damp moss with her hands outstretched, her eyes closed. The air shimmered faintly around her, the same way it had the night in the cavern. "You listening to the trees again?" he asked. Her smile was faint. "Always. The forest carries memories. When the collectors pass, their machines leave scars I can feel. They're close again." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we hit them before they find this place." That night, the council gathered in the main cavern. Elder Torin presided, surrounded by the pale light of the crystal roots that hung from the ceiling like living chandeliers. Marin, the warrior leader, stood beside him, tall and scarred, with the stance of a soldier who'd seen too much and buried more. "The collectors have taken the eastern ridge," Marin said grimly. "If they push west, they'll find our tunnels within days." Torin turned to Lena. "Can your pathfinders block their scanners?" "Not indefinitely," she replied. "But Jack's human technology, his weapons, may give us an advantage." The word human still carried weight, drawing every gaze to him. Jack straightened, ignoring the distrust simmering in the air. "I've got a weapons cache hidden near my old cabin," he said. "Enough hardware to give you a fighting chance. But it's risky. They might be waiting." Marin folded his arms. "And we strike first." Torin's brow furrowed. "A direct assault could bring ruin upon us all." Jack's voice was calm. "Defense won't save you. You can't hide from people who treat you like product. You make them bleed, they'll think twice before coming back." Silence followed, heavy and electric. Finally, Torin inclined his head. "Very well. You and Marin will lead a small retrieval team. Lena will guide you." Jack nodded once. "We move at dawn." The next morning, mist lay thick over the forest floor. The team advanced in silence, Jack in front, Lena close behind, Marin and two fighters bringing up the rear. Every sense was alive. tuned to the rhythm of the woods. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to react. Leaves shifted. Roots flexed beneath the soil. It was as if the planet itself was watching. When they reached the ridge, Jack crouched low, signaling a halt. Through the fog, he could see the clearing where his cabin once stood, or what was left of it. Charred beams, shattered glass, smoke-stained soil. The structure had been picked apart, dissected. Collector patrols moved among the wreckage, sleek, insectoid shapes glinting silver in the half-light. 12 of them, armed and methodical. In the center stood a taller figure whose armor gleamed with gold accents. No helmet. A face like carved chitin and obsidian, long mandibles twitching as it issued commands in a metallic language. Lena's whisper brushed his ear. Commander Vix. Jack studied the alien commander, noting how his black eyes moved with eerie precision, how his hands never stopped motioning. He's smart, Jack murmured. He's not just hunting you. He's studying you. He's studying us all, Lena replied bitterly. Jack's jaw flexed. We'll need to draw them out. He slipped his pack open, revealing 2 compact devices, pulse grenades with manual triggers. You ever thrown one of these? No, she said. But I've moved storms. Close enough. He handed her one. On my signal. He ghosted forward, silent as the mist, placing the first grenade near the ruins of the old water tank. The patrols didn't notice him yet. When he glanced back, Lena was watching, her markings faintly glowing. For a moment, the forest seemed to pulse in rhythm with her. Now, he mouthed. She raised her hand. The air thickened. The moss glowed brighter. And then the grenade detonated in a flash of light and sound that shook the trees. The collectors reeled, their sensors scrambled. Jack charged through the smoke, rifle blazing. The first 3 fell before they could even aim. Marin's fighters joined the fray from the tree line, cutting down another 2. The forest itself seemed to fight with them, branches whipping, roots surging upward to trip armored legs. Amid the chaos, Jack spotted Vix, standing unflinching as his soldiers fell. Their eyes met across the smoke. For a heartbeat, Jack felt something cold crawl up his spine, like the alien was reading his thoughts. Then Vix tilted his head and spoke into a wrist-mounted device. A second later, a shrill pulse echoed through the air, a signal. Fall back, Jack shouted. They've got reinforcements inbound. Lena appeared beside him, breathing hard. He knows us now, she said. He saw a resonance. Good, Jack growled. Now he knows what it's like to be hunted. They retreated through the forest as the second wave of transports descended. The air filled with the whine of engines and the hiss of energy bolts slicing through the mist. The group sprinted for the stream where they planned their fallback. Lena threw out a hand, her markings flaring bright as she whispered something in her native tongue. The trees responded, roots snapping upward to form a living wall that shielded their escape. Behind them, the collectors crashed into the barrier, weapons blazing. Go! She shouted. They reached the far side of the ravine, lungs burning. Jack glanced back once, watching the flames lick through what was left of his old life. Guess that's the end of my cabin, he said grimly. You can build another, Lena replied. If we live that long. Her voice softened. You fought like one of us today. I'm just getting started, he said. But when she met his gaze, there was a flicker of something more, something neither could name. The forest quieted again around them, as if exhaling after violence. For the first time since coming to Ardan, Jack felt not like a trespasser, but like part of something alive, ancient, and fierce. And deep in his chest, the part of him that had gone silent years ago began to stir again, steady as a heartbeat. Night had settled over the forest like a slow tide, washing the trees in indigo light. Smoke from the destroyed cabin still curled faintly above the canopy, a ghostly reminder of what they'd left behind. Jack sat on a fallen log outside the resistance camp, cleaning his rifle with methodical focus, but his thoughts weren't on the weapon. He could still feel the way Commander Vix's black eyes had fixed on him during the fight. The cold precision in that alien stare. There was something about it, too aware, too intent. Lena approached quietly, her steps making no sound against the moss. Her markings glowed softly, tracing blue lines down her neck and arms. "Elder Torin wants us in the council chamber," she said. Jack set the rifle aside and stood. "Let me guess more bad news." Her smile was brief, sad. "Always." Inside the main cavern, tension hung thick in the air. The elders sat in a semicircle near the glowing crystal pools, their faces lined with exhaustion. The twins were there too, hovering close to one another, small hands clasped tight. Elder Torin's expression was grave. "Our scouts report increased collector activity," he said. "The Commander Vix has deployed new machines across the ridge. Their scanners have grown more precise. They will find us within days." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Marin's jaw clenched. "Then we strike first." "No," Torin replied sharply. "They would crush us." Jack leaned forward. "Maybe not. He's not hunting all of you anymore." "Explain," Torin said. "He's hunting me," Jack answered simply. Silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the crystals. Lena's eyes widened slightly. "Because of the resonance," she whispered. "He felt it in the battle." Jack nodded. "He wants to know what makes me different, why I can interact with your world the way you can. He thinks it's biological." Torin's gaze sharpened. "You would let yourself be bait?" "Not bait," Jack said. "A distraction." He turned toward Lena. "We get inside his ship. We destroy the harvesting systems from the inside out." "That's suicide," Marin said flatly. Jack met his stare without blinking. "Maybe, but it's the only way to stop him for good." Torin shook his head. "You would sacrifice yourself?" "I'd rather die fighting than wait to be hunted," Jack replied. The twins moved closer, their small voices trembling. "We can help," Nera said. "We can feel the collectors before they move. We'll know when he's close." Jack crouched to meet their eyes. "You're not coming anywhere near that ship, but no." His tone softened. "You've done enough." The girls looked stricken but obeyed. When Jack rose, Lena was studying him in silence. "If you go," she said softly, "I go with you." He shook his head. "You're their leader. They'll need you when it's done." "They'll need hope," she said. "And you give them that." For a long moment, they just looked at each other in the glow of the cavern. Then Jack exhaled. "All right. We do this together." That night, in the quiet alcove near the outer tunnels, they prepared. Jack checked the explosives hidden in his boots, old marine tech small enough to evade scanners. Lena packed a satchel of resonance crystals, each one pulsing faintly with life. "You ever think you'd end up teaming with a human?" he asked, half smiling. "No," she said honestly. "But the forest seems to think it was inevitable." She moved closer, placing her hand on his chest. The glow from her markings spread faintly into him, a heartbeat of shared warmth. "Don't be afraid," she whispered. "You kidding?" "I'm terrified," he said, and she smiled despite everything. Before dawn, they left the camp under the cover of mist. The collector ship loomed above the northern clearing like a monstrous insect, metallic, angular, humming with energy. Jack and Lena walked openly into the floodlights, their hands raised. Within seconds, they were surrounded. Vix descended the ramp with inhuman grace, mandibles flexing in amusement. "The human and his guide," he rasped. "You deliver yourselves. Efficient." Jack's mouth twisted. "We're tired of running." "So predictable," Vix hissed. Bring them? The guards marched them inside. The corridors were alive with machinery, pulsing veins of blue energy running through the walls. The air smelled sweet and sterile, too clean to be natural. Jack counted doors and guards, memorizing layout. Lena's hand brushed his once a silent code. They reached a vast chamber lined with glass tanks, each filled with luminous fluid that pulsed faintly with light. Floating within were fragments of Ardanite tissue, suspended like ghosts. Vix stepped to a console, his mandibles twitching. Magnificent, is it not? The lifeblood of a species refined to perfection. His gaze slid to Jack. And now, human, your resilience will make it complete. The hybrid of flesh and energy. Immortality. Jack's lip curled. You talk too much. Arrogance, Vix hissed. A human flaw. As the commander approached, the twins' voices rang suddenly from the entrance high, terrified, but brave. Let them go. They had followed. Jack's stomach turned cold. No, he whispered. Vix turned, mandibles flaring in amusement. Ah, the children. More subjects for the harvest. That was his mistake. Jack lunged, slamming into him with every ounce of strength. The commander reeled, chittering in rage. Lena's markings erupted in a blinding surge of light, momentarily freezing the guards. Run! Jack shouted to the twins. They bolted for cover as energy bolts screamed through the chamber. Jack fought like a man possessed, rifle forgotten, fists and fury his weapons now. Lena! He yelled. She understood instantly, ripping the boot explosives free and tossing them toward the central core. Detonator set. Then move. Jack slammed Vix against the console, shoving the armed charge into the alien's armor seam. You wanted evolution? He snarled. Let's see how you adapt to this. He drove a final punch into the detonator and threw himself backward, dragging Lena toward the exit. The explosion ripped through the ship like thunder, shattering the tanks, flooding the corridors with light and heat. The hull screamed as energy surged through its veins, fire blooming from within. They burst into the night just as the ship tore apart in a cascade of burning fragments. The shockwave flung them into the dirt, breathless but alive. Behind them, the collector vessel became a collapsing star, swallowed by its own brilliance. Lena rolled onto her side, gasping, her markings flickering like dying embers. Jack reached for her hand. You okay? I think so, she breathed. The twins stumbled toward them, tears streaking their glowing cheeks, but they were smiling. You did it, Kira said. Jack managed a tired grin. We did it. The forest was quiet again, save for the distant crackle of fire and the whisper of leaves. Above them, the sky glowed faintly blue, as though Ardan itself had seen what they'd done and approved. Jack looked at the three of them, the woman, the children. The world he'd almost ignored, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He pulled them close. The faint hum of the forest surrounding them. It's over, he said softly. For now. But in his bones, he knew this was only the beginning of something greater. Morning came soft and golden through the mist, carrying with it a peace the forest hadn't known in years. The wreckage of the collector ship lay scattered across the northern ridge, twisted metal still steaming where the soil had cooled it overnight. Birds, real birds, not drones, had returned, their trills tentative, testing the silence. Jack stood at the edge of the clearing with his rifle slung over one shoulder, staring at the smoldering debris. 3 months ago, he'd come to Ardan for quiet. Now the world was alive again, and his solitude was gone forever. Behind him came laughter light, bright, unguarded. Nera and Kira ran through the waist-high grass, their silver hair flashing in the sunlight. They chased each other around the roots of an enormous tree that had sprouted overnight where the ship had crashed. Its bark gleamed faintly blue, as if it had grown out of the planet's gratitude. Lena watched them from the porch of the rebuilt cabin, her indigo skin luminous in the dawn. She wore simple leather wraps, her hair loose for once, a woven crown of silver vines resting above her brow. Jack turned as she approached, the morning light turning the faint patterns on her skin to living fire. "They've got energy to burn," he said. "They've got something to live for," she replied, sliding her hand into his. "So do you." He looked down at her, and for a heartbeat, the forest's quiet pressed close, the scent of dew, the warmth of her palm, the hum that always stirred when they touched. He'd never found words for that feeling. Maybe it was resonance. Maybe it was something older than language. "Elder Torin wants to see us," she said after a while. "He says it's important." Jack grunted, amused. Elders always think that. But he followed her anyway. The resistance camp had changed since the battle. No longer a warren of desperation, it had become a village Ardanites building homes from living roots and luminous vines, children laughing as they helped weave crystal threads into the walls. They nodded to Jack as he passed, some smiling now instead of flinching. He still wasn't used to that. Torin waited near the heart of the new settlement, standing beside the great crystal pool that served as both light and lifeblood for the camp. The water shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the sky. "You came," Torin said, his voice as deep as the earth. "I hear you've been busy turning hermits into legends." Jack scratched his beard. "Wasn't my idea. Things just got complicated." The elder smiled faintly. "The universe often hides truth in complications." He gestured toward the pool. "Look." Jack stepped closer. The surface rippled, then cleared. He saw a vision of the forest spreading outward, healing, the scars of battle closing beneath new growth. "Ardan remembers those who defend it," Torin said. "You've become part of that memory, human. But there is something else you must know." Lena tensed beside him. "What is it?" The elder's glowing eyes turned toward Jack. "You wonder why the forest recognized you. Why your energy resonates with ours. It is not coincidence." Jack frowned. "I thought it was your planet choosing." "It was," Torin said gently. "But it chose its own kind." The words hung between them, heavy and impossible. "What are you saying?" Jack asked. "Long before your species left its cradle world, before humans learned to shape fire or dream of stars, Ardan sent seed ships into the void-living vessels that carried fragments of its essence. Some reached your world. Some became you." Lena drew in a sharp breath. "You mean humans and Ardanites share origin?" Torin finished. "Separated by time, by distance, but of one design. You are the same root that grew two trees." Jack stared at the pool, his reflection rippling alongside hers. He'd spent years feeling like an outsider on Earth, in the cores, even here among the stars. Now the irony hit him like a quiet hammer. He'd come all this way to hide from his own species and found kin among aliens. "Guess that explains a few things," he said softly. Lena's hand found his again, trembling slightly. "You were never an outsider to us." Torin smiled, a glint of ancient warmth in his eyes. "The forest remembers its children, even the ones who left and forgot." As they left the council, the news spread through the camp like a fresh wind. No one recoiled. Instead, Ardanites bowed their heads to Jack in respect. For them, he wasn't alien, he was the bridge, the living proof that unity wasn't myth. Later, at dusk, he stood outside the cabin, watching the twins chase fireflies that glowed like floating stars. The forest hummed quietly, the tree from the wreck towering behind the house like a guardian. Lena came up beside him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "The twins want to learn how to use the axe tomorrow," she murmured against his back. Jack chuckled. Maybe something smaller than mine. Don't want to lose any fingers. They adore you, she said. So do I. He turned in her embrace, brushing his thumb along the luminous pattern on her cheek. You still sure you want to tie your life to a stubborn human? You still sure you want to live among talking trees? She countered, smiling. He laughed quietly. Yeah, I think I do. Her markings pulsed brighter, syncing unconsciously with the beat of his heart. Beyond them, Nera and Kira climbed one of the lower roots of the great tree, their laughter echoing through the dusk. The light of their small bodies flickered against the bark, like two living sparks carried on a breath of wind. Jack watched them and felt a deep, anchoring calm. Back on Earth, he said softly, we used to say family isn't always blood. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. On Ardan, she whispered, we say the roots choose their own trees. He smiled at that, at the simple truth of it, and pulled her closer as the forest's glow deepened around them. The air was warm, alive, filled with the soft rustle of leaves and the sound of laughter, human and Ardanite intertwined. And somewhere beneath them, the world itself hummed in quiet harmony, as if the planet had found its heartbeat again, and this time it beat in two voices, perfectly in sync.